Hello, Paula. Good to see you. My volume coming through okay?
Good
Oh,
to see you too.
right on. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I wouldn't miss it.
Awesome. Well, I'll give a couple minutes and see who else decides to pop on. I might just be talking to you today.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm with that.
in the room would be okay. Sorry, trying to manage the background noises here.
Yeah, no problem.
Right
I'm
on.
I'm all comfy today. I've got my blanket and coffee. I'm ready, ready to learn.
Very cool. I'm so
Mhm.
excited about this. I wrote up this lecture like over the last couple of weeks, and then I've been revisiting it as I go, and I keep, like usually when I first create something, that's when I'm most excited to share it. But this time, each time I've gone back through it, I get more excited again. I'm like, this is the stuff that I've been most wanting to share. And it's coming in from the angle that actually speaks to me most directly because this aspect of the superconscious really lets us touch on human potential and the wide range of its expression throughout our history and culture. So I get to go to the heart of some really fun stuff today.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I am so looking forward to this because if I trust you with delivering this information in a clear and clear way. So that's wonderful.
That is awesome. Right on. Well, I guess I'll just go ahead and get started. And any stragglers that want to come in, hopefully they can keep up with the
Yeah,
changes.
yeah,
All right.
totally.
So, hello and blessings, beautiful beings. Thank you so much for joining me today in this exploration of the superconscious. For the last 35 years, I've dedicated my life to a study of human potential. And this isn't just an academic study. For me, my interest here is practical. So I was raised on stories. So from myths and legends from cultures across the world to biblical stories to science fiction, fantasy. And from the beginning, it seemed evident to me that there was more to the story that we were given. Every culture has accounts of humans doing amazing things, and every culture has a different explanation of how this is possible. So I began exploring all the different cultural and spiritual perspectives I could. I began learning all the different healing modalities I could find, all the different religious and magical traditions. And in my explorations, I looked for the dovetails, the points of overlap that they all share. So from the beginning, I've been gathering the fragments of magic and weaving them together into a single coherent perspective that opens a way for us to access our deeper abilities. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today on this lecture on superconscious integration. So we'll be exploring the nature of the superconscious, the abilities offered in connection with this aspect of our being, and how we can integrate these higher abilities into daily life. So in a way, this is nothing new, right? Humans have found so many ways to access our superconscious ability in the form of healing, intuition, inspiration, empathy, manifestation, and so much more. The challenge is that the stories that we use to understand these things, they seem on the surface quite different from one another. Plus, we're all so unique. We're each on our own personal journey, and we each make sense of the world in our own ways. So there's no one size fits all in our exploration of the depths of our being. So over the last 4 decades, I've been bringing these seemingly disparate perspectives together, and what has emerged is a new subjective science, a science of synchrony. And what this offers is a clear understanding of the mechanism behind the miracle. So this is so that we can engage with our abilities in a personal way, attuned to the context of our lives, rather than through paths constructed long ago and parroted over the ages, right? So today I'll be explaining how empathy, intuition, energy work, and creative inspiration work all on an energetic level. And I'll be sharing a bit about the modality that I've created to raise the bar in every aspect of our lives, integrating the spiritual and the practical. So this paves the way to support your creation of an open-ended practice, aligned with spiritual principles, attuned to your unique perspective and life experience. So put simply, it's a game changer. So here's just a little overview of what we'll be touching on today. We'll be looking at what is the superconscious and what is superconscious integration. And we'll look at why we haven't been taught this from the beginning. Then we're going to start to look at how we can access our superconscious ability reliably and at will. And from there, we're going to take it into a deep dive into the subjective science of synchrony. And we're going to take a peek at the future of the subjective sciences. And then I'm going to share with you my own approach, little bits of it anyway, which is a streamlined, actionable, and open-ended foundation for personal magic. So to kick this off a little bit, I'll tell you a little bit more about me, where I come from, and my why in this whole situation, right? So for as long as I remember, I've been fascinated by accounts of the magical and the miraculous. And so much of who I am today is a credit to my father. My father raised me and my brother with stories from peoples all around the world and all throughout history. So mythology from Native American tribes, from Greek and Roman and Norse, biblical tales, scientific accounts of the world, just to name a few. And in every single culture, we have accounts of humans doing amazing things. So from the beginning, I saw this, right? And I wanted to know how to do these things, right? We got stories of yogis who are able to control the autonomic functions of the body at will, Zen archers able to consistently hit the center of the target, blindfolded and on horseback. We have stories of shamans communicating with the land and with spirit to glean practical insight and wield mystic might, right? Miraculous healing, reading signs to gain insights into our unfolding future. Every culture hints at the same untapped human potential. So I heard all of these things, and it seemed to me that they spoke of depths to the human experience, amazing potentials that we've lost contact with in modern culture. So I saw, and I still see, all of these different cultural and spiritual perspectives as different flashlights in the same dark room, right? Different iterations of the same truth in different languages from different vantage points, but coming from the same core insight. So from a young age, I embarked on a quest, set myself a little quest to bring these fragments of magic together, to bring these different perspectives together and find the overlaps that speak of fundamental human potential, right? Because all of these traditions, they're ways of accessing what is possible for the human. They're ways of accessing our fundamental human potential. And as I mentioned, they all draw from common spiritual insights: unity, emotion, intention, and will, attention and energy, and more. And bit by bit, I learned every single approach that I could, and not in an academic way. Like I said, my study has been practical, internalizing and embodying this wisdom so I could make use of this potential and like higher potential in my daily life. Now, our higher abilities are reflections of our connection with the superconscious, with the field of quantum information from which our individual consciousness emerges. Now, the superconscious is described in various cultures in different ways, with different names and different stories to make sense of it, but the power and perfection of source is a recurring theme, as is the personal connection that we each have to the source of life and to the foundation of our experience. And as I began to incorporate these different approaches within my own being, they started to fuse together and synergize into a whole greater than the sum of the parts. And this is what I'd really like to share with you, right? So in order to share this, I've had to streamline all of these bits of wisdom into a clear human container, accessible to each of us, regardless of the stories that we use to make sense of the world. And what emerged is a blend of ancient wisdom and modern scientific understanding, placed within the frame of the human body and the human experience. And this is a frame that we all share. Like, we're all humans sitting here exploring, sharing with one another. So the human body and experience is, it's a basis for a common language of the subjective. And it opens it up because this superconscious potential isn't restricted to some gifted few. It's part of the fabric of human experience, and it's on offer for all those who are called to inner exploration. So today, I'll be sharing with you the keys to stepping into a personal relationship with Source, aligning with our highest potential in a reliable and solid way, and then bringing this potential into every nook and cranny of our daily lives. And this is a living practice that transforms every bit of our experience with the light of consciousness, right? So let's get into it, right? We're starting with what is the superconscious? What is superconscious integration? It sounds all complicated and abstract, you know. Let's start with humans are absolutely incredible. We dream our world into being. And then we live in this dream so fully that it begins to take shape in the space around us. And we do this on an individual level, but we also do it on a collective level, creating cultures and civilizations, each of which are crystallized reflections of our inner worlds. Now, the most amazing thing about this dreaming that humans do is that we do it without even realizing it. Our conscious mind is free to be a character in the dream, absorbed in the experience, while all the creation of the dreaming is going on a much deeper level. Right? Now, modern psychology recognizes that the conscious mind is only a very small part of our experience. I mean, waking conscious is just an interface, really, between like the vast reserves of information in the subconscious and the specific needs of the moment. So the conscious mind is the pilot, but it's not calling the shots. Our decisions are made subconsciously prior to conscious engagement. And if we're questioned, like if somebody asks us why you do that, we'll look back and we'll generate a conscious reason. And a lot of times we'll think that that was our true motivation, right? But really, the conscious impulse was the emergence of a subconscious decision made prior to conscious awareness, before we're actively thinking about it, right? So we have the waking consciousness, which we just call conscious when discussing the human experience. And then we have the subconscious, which contains all that we've ever thought, all that we've experienced, all that we've perceived. And the subconscious structures this information, these bits of story and emotional charge. It indexes this story and emotional charge by association. And it makes bits of information accessible to the conscious mind when they seem relevant. And that's whenever present moment awareness shows similarity and triggers association to some of our indexed knowledge. So the subconscious mind tells the body how to grow as well. And you can see this with the placebo effect. When subconscious expectations of healing accompany a drug or an activity, then these subconscious expectations alone can be sufficient to result in healing, right? And you can see it on the other side as well. Like in times of intense stress, psychosomatic effects can cause discomfort or illness. And this is the subconscious causing the body to manifest symptoms in response to this stress, in response to the quality that we're sending back to it from our conscious experience. So the subconscious mind guides and influences the autonomic and organic function of the body. The subconscious also picks up all the information which streams into our senses. And that's even the stuff the conscious mind misses, right? Every single bit of your surroundings is perceived and recorded on a subconscious level. So everything that we've ever experienced in our lives, conscious or not, is still in there, and it will be for our entire lives. And not only that, it's not just recording it and sticking it on a shelf somewhere. We continue to process and integrate all that we've ever learned and experienced effortlessly and below the threshold of conscious awareness. And sometimes out of the blue, right? Insights just drop in. And they're gems resulting from a new configuration of idea and emotion. They're products of this invisible inner process. And it goes on, right? The subconscious has lightning fast parallel processing, and it's got the ability to form isolated subprograms, right? And what does that mean, right? That means that we can actually wall off information from ourselves so the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So because of this, we all generate different voices within us. Each of these different voices is attuned to a set of stories and emotional charge. Each voice champions a particular need or value or perspective. And these inner voices relate with the information present in the subconsciously differently than does the conscious mind. So this actually gives us the ability to connect with voices of inner wisdom, right? But that's not all. But all that we've touched on is still just the subconscious. The subconscious is the personal stuff, where we've been, what we've experienced, all the bits that we've personally learned and felt. But at the furthest reaches of the subconscious, it just goes further. Through these same inner depths, we can access knowledge of things that we haven't experienced. we can attune to the fundamental field of consciousness from which all individual consciousness emerges, and in the process, bring forth valid knowledge, actionable skill, wisdom, insight, incredible vision, right? This is accessing the realm of the superconscious, and we do it all the time. So think about it, right? Have you ever had an experience where you just knew something without any evidence or logical reason? I mean, maybe you knew like a loved one was upset or hurt or sick, or maybe you knew who the call was coming from before actually looking at the phone, right? All of the information in the quantum field is accessible through the depths of the subconscious. And especially charged bits of information will tend to come through on our own. So this is the function of intuition, and we use it unconsciously all the time. And now, how about in human interaction, right? Have you ever been in a flowing conversation with a friend or a loved one, and they said exactly the word or phrase that you had in mind, like so specifically that it had to be more than coincidence? Or maybe you felt someone looking at you, even though you weren't looking at them and you were just completely unconscious until you noticed the feeling. Or maybe you've looked at someone and had a deep sense of what they were feeling and maybe even what triggered that feeling, right? This is empathy, and it's woven into the undercurrent of human interaction. So when we come together and synchronize, we create a bubble of shared thought and emotion where these things occur equally and spontaneously to both sides. And synchronization is the key here. We're going to be discussing that a bit. It's the key to understanding the superconscious and to connecting reliably with our higher abilities. But we'll come back to that in a minute. So just to explore a little bit further, the superconscious in human life. How about creative work? Have you ever been in a creative flow, whether with word or music or physical art, visual art, and you look back at what you've created with wonder, right? Sometimes the vision that flows through is bigger than anything that the conscious mind could construct. And when we learn to let this vision flow through without interruption, the finished product reflects something higher than our personal skill. So this could be called channeling, and it's a way of linking the superconscious genius with conscious action, focusing and anchoring this brilliance into a performance or a creation. Now, the conscious mind can't make this happen, right? It can't force it, but it can position itself such that it invites and allows it to happen. And we can learn to participate in this flow rather than interfering by trying to over control. So we can learn the flow state, the state of invitation, and the free flow of inspiration through our being. We can channel brilliance, and we can learn how to do this with anything, right? Anything. So learning this state, this inner state, it massively increases dexterity, ability, insight, focus, clarity, presence, the ability to put all that into action in attunement with the currents of the world. So other bits where superconscious shows up, manifestation, right? This is a big one for people these days, and I don't really agree with much of the modern perspective on it. It's really just resonance. We attract, invite, create, and navigate to situations which reflect our vibration, which reflect our inner stories and emotional charge. So this is resonance. Resonance is incredibly powerful. It works in the background 24/7 to align us with specific life circumstances. And you can't pin it down objectively, this whole process of resonance and manifestation in our lives, because life always takes the path of least resistance when manifesting these things. So the situations we experience, they manifest in completely ordinary ways, completely natural. We can see all the practical ways that a particular outcome came to be, and nothing will seem amiss. But from the subjective window of experience, we can connect the dots pretty quickly between our inner story and charge and the outer events that we find ourselves in. So this is part of our superconscious connection with the frame of reality itself. So the superconscious is the part of our being that extends beyond the personal and into the universal. And I like to describe it as a quantum field of information and consciousness. And within this field is the seed potential for every thought, every form, every being, every created thing, all vibrations and all relations. Within this field of consciousness is the power that unfolds into reality, that evokes creation. It sings the song, I am, and it is the core of all beings, the singular source of creation, right? So as we look inward and attune with this source, all power, all skill, all knowledge, all awareness and connection and relation, all is made accessible to us. And that's amazing, right? But we're finite beings. We're unable to hold all of that at once. So in order to make this accessible to us in daily life, we have to build a bridge. We have to establish a healthy working relationship, first between the conscious and the subconscious functions of our being, and then beyond. Now, again, this sounds complicated when we lay it out like this, but it's something that we do every day without even thinking about it. So whenever we learn something, for example, learning is attuning to a specific portion of knowledge within the collective field. But we can actually learn the state of attunement and shorten the learning curve for everything. So this helps us to bring through solid, actionable knowledge and skill much more quickly and effectively. So we can learn to align our focus with information in the field, invite it, and allow it to flow through a constructive channel. Now, this isn't just about information, right? The function of the superconscious, it also comes forth in healing and creation, action, manifestation. We have a powerful effect on the physical world, or at least upon our experience of the physical world. And as we begin to integrate our subconscious function with our conscious experience, this effect becomes intentional. And we begin to craft a life aligned with our values. We begin to become the artists of our own life. So this is amazing, right? But even all of this is way underselling it. Integrating the superconscious with the conscious is a process of remembering who we truly are. And every single aspect of our lives transforms in response to this. So if this is so amazing, why haven't we been exploring it already, right? Now, I mean, it offers such benefit. Why aren't we doing more with it? In a way, we are, with different spiritual perspectives and healing modalities, but the simple answer to this is that it's very tricky to work with, right? So even if you're a person with strong intuition or empathy, it can still be spotty and unreliable. Or even if you're a strong manifester, sometimes you find yourself in situations that the conscious mind would never have chosen. Even if you're an amazing artist, inspiration comes when it's good and ready, and not in response to us trying to force it. So these things, they operate on a completely different level than our explorations of the physical world. You can't pin down consciousness. You can't see it. You can't touch it, right? In fact, some strong materialists have come to the conclusion that consciousness itself is an illusion, which to me seems like an insane conclusion for a conscious being to arrive at, right? Like there's only one thing that we can be absolutely certain of. I am, right? Raw, unformed amness at the center of our being. That's the one sure thing we've got, the one thing we actually experience, right? Now, I like Descartes' approach to this, right? Descartes' phrase, I think, therefore I am. It's still around today. We shoot it back and forth. It's made its way into popular culture. But a lot of times people misunderstand what Descartes was actually saying. He wasn't talking about thought, and he wasn't talking about I as Descartes, right? He said, if all of the reports from my senses and if everything that I've learned, if everything like that is uncertain, if it's all maybe a massive deception, what can I still be certain of? And he realized, well, I'm still around to ask the question. I think, therefore I am, right? And this is about the I-ness in a way that transcends the personal. So each of us can know with absolute certainty only our own consciousness. Everything else we understand either as raw sensory data or in terms of stories, stories like context, personal history, the network of our relations and roles. Now, our culture is at a really powerful transition point. We're shifting from an objective bias that we've been exploring for the last few hundred years to a more human-centered perspective. And we're making this transition by leaps and bounds, right? So a few hundred years back, in order to simplify our investigations of the physical world, we began limiting our explorations to things that can be measured. This came in with Galileo, actually, and it was an intentional move to leave out the subjective and to confine it to what could be measured so that we could gain reliable knowledge over time, so we could build a foundation of clear understanding, right? And it's been amazing for our working with the physical world. It's allowed a deep mastery of the material, the mechanical, the chemical, even while we know next to nothing about our own conscious, which is the only thing we actually experience directly. So I like to go to the core of things, right? I like to question the very foundations of anything that I take on and learn. And one thing that I love to question is the concept of the objective world, right? The whole paradigm of the objective sciences relies on the idea of an objective world, a physical world that is the same, regardless of whether it's being observed or not, right? Things stay where you put them unless someone or something moves them. And if something's going 50 miles an hour, it's really going 50 miles an hour, even if it seems to me to be going 100 or 30 or whatever. Now, we are biologically biased and culturally conditioned to perceive the world in these terms. But the objective world is a story. It's an abstraction. No one has ever experienced it. No one can ever experience the objective world because their entire frame from which to view the world is a subjective frame. So I have my view of this, you have your view of that, they have their view of it, and it presents a bit differently in each of our subjective frames, right? So this is complicated. How can something be different to you than it is to me? It's this way or it's not, and that's just how things are, right? But that's not true. Each of us is at the center of our own subjective universe, experiencing everything from within that frame of relation. And it's quite possible, in fact, it happens all the time, for the same outer event to mean completely different things to two different onlookers. For that same one situation to be two and more completely valid and completely different experiences. So the nature of a situation for any individual or element of that situation, it depends on where we stand in relation to it. So in order to explore the subjective realms as we have the material world, we need a new science, because objective science will not work when applied to the subjective experience. So for this, we need a subjective science. And this subjective science must be one of personal discovery, because we're each conducting our own unique subjective experience, right? So it can't grow through consensus, which is how the objective sciences grow in knowledge, like repeatable coming from different angles, people coming together and agreeing, oh yeah, this is how it works. That's growing through consensus. Now, instead, our subjective sciences have to grow through personal application and inner exploration, with the assistance of the wise guidance of those who have established a working relationship with their superconscious. And this is just like the science and practice of yoga. It grows within each practitioner while still offering principles and insights that can benefit all practitioners, right? So the subjective sciences are counterintuitive to those who have invested their belief in an objective world. Belief in the objective world as a fundamental reality tells us that the feelings that we have when taking an action have no measurable effect on the outcome of that action. It tells us that our inner world is intangible and impotent, and the forces in the outer world determine the outcome of any given situation. But our experience shows us time and again that the feelings that drive an action are reflected in the results that we get from that action. It shouldn't work. And it doesn't make sense if we're stuck to the view of an inanimate world that exists independent of our experience of it. But these superconscious abilities and phenomena do work, and we have experiences all the time which reflect this deeper connection to the world. So this means that our model of the world is flawed, at least when it comes to working with consciousness and the abilities that arise from it. So these abilities work because the nature of the world is very different than it appears to us. At a fundamental level, this is not a physical universe, but a psychological one. Although it seems that things are separate and distinct from one another, all is one, and one is all. And when we can engage our consciousness with the moment of experience in different ways, our experience shifts to reflect this change in engagement. So the bigger the shift of consciousness, the bigger the shift in our experience of reality. So the question is, right, how can we learn to access the superconscious reliably and at will? And in simple terms, the biggest key to connecting solidly with our higher faculties is in learning to shift our inner state. So we tend to think of just one mode of conscious function, like normal waking consciousness, as the appropriate state to engage with reality. But we actually have different modes of function, and each of these modes is good for different activities. So these modes of conscious function, they're reflected in the physical with different brain frequencies and with different configurations of biological and neurological activity. And when we learn to be aware of our mode of mental function and to shift from one mode to the other, we can use the mode that will best work for our current needs. All right. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that our mode is connected to our frequency. And to put it in simple terms for our discussion here today, our frequency is how quickly our inner drum is beating. So when we're going faster inwardly, it feels very different than when we're going slower. When we go into meditation, we slow our inner rhythm. And this is reflected in the function of the brain. So the brainwave frequency, as it slows from the beta frequency of problem-solving consciousness, that's 8 to 32 hertz, to the alpha frequency of 4 to 8 hertz, it increases in amplitude, right? So you got like lots of activity in the beta frequency, different parts of the brain all doing their things independently. And then when it slows down, the peaks rise, which means more parts of the brain are jumping on the bandwagon and operating at once. They're synchronizing. So the brain synchronizes as it slows, and more parts of the brain fire at once. And as more of the brain operates as a unit, inwardly, our conscious and subconscious functions come a little bit closer together. So when we slow our rhythm, the conscious mind begins to synchronize a little bit with the subconscious functions. And meditation is a way of shifting into a mode where conscious intention can be more readily received by the subconscious mind, and where subconscious inspiration can come forth more easily. So again, it does this by synchronizing the conscious and subconscious functions just a little bit more than they are during the waking state, right? Now, this is a key concept, and it's one that I shared again and again in my book, but it sounds confusing, right? Resonance establishes functional unity. I'll break that down today, right? But in other words, what synchronizes acts in small part as a one thing, right? So two different parts, they synchronize, and suddenly they are one. Now, as we slow the frequency, to look at the human side of things for a little bit more, as we slow the frequency further into the theta, that's 1 to 4 hertz, 1 to 4 cycles per second, we enter a dreamy state, weighted a little bit more to the subconscious than the conscious. And this is a powerful state for inner journeying, active visualization, deep energetic work, and it's reflected physically in the function of the brain, with even more parts synchronizing, even more operating as an integrated unit. So in order to access the subconscious, in order to access our superconscious state reliably, we must first establish a strong working relationship between the conscious and the subconscious, because we peer into the depths of the subconscious to connect beyond with that universal consciousness. So intuitive work, for example, it requires the conscious mind to set an intention as to what to view intuitively. And then the conscious mind enters a state of invitation, enters a quiet space, allowing hits to come up from the superconscious through the subconscious, and they rise effortlessly after we've sent that intention back and entered the state of invitation. These hits, intuitive hits, rise almost as if from their own volition. So the next step in intuitive work is screening the intuitive hits against the random fluctuations of the subconscious. And with a bit of practice, we learn to tune in more clearly and distinguish more readily between the signal and the noise, between the valid, actionable information coming up through the superconscious and the second guessing and the questions and the little imaginative ideas that we have come up. You know, they come in with a little bit of a different quality, and we can learn to distinguish between the two. So looking at it with healing, in a way, it's even easier, right? Healing is working with your body and with the subtle energies that constitute your higher bodies. So in a meditative state, the conscious and subconscious minds partner up. The conscious mind leads the attention through the body, while the subconscious mind receives the visualized intention and guides the energy through the field. And partnering together, energy flows where attention goes. And as it does so, it carries the quality of our thoughts and feelings. It echoes the vibration of our body and being. So when we heal others, when we perform a healing for others, we first synchronize with the intention and emotion, with the energy of healing. And then we synchronize with the field of the individual receiving this healing, and allowing these fields to merge in part as a one thing, which brings the healing energy into the whole field of the one thing, right? So the key here is the state of invitation. Instead of pushing or forcing, we connect with our higher faculties by allowing them to come through. So not by trying, but tuning in, and then making space for it to emerge and flow through us. So when we enter a state of invitation, we naturally synchronize with whatever we're attuning to, whatever we're sending our energetic antenna of attention out to. And when we synchronize with this point of focus, our field merges into resonance with that focal point. So that might be a body of information. It might be a particular quality of energy. It might be a vision. It might be, it could be anything, really. I love to use it for learning. But like this principle, it's used in Tai Chi to guide physical motion, to attune to the flow of energy around, and to generate physical power, balance, and stability. In Reiki, this state is used to channel universal healing energy. In Zen, this state is the key to entering a flow state, becoming a hollow tube through which the divine can flow, creating amazing performance and ability beyond our personal limits. So all modalities make use of intention along with the state of invitation to provide access to the superconscious through synchronization, through resonance, right? Now, we can't learn everything, right? The superconscious is infinite. It's got all of it. And our experience in the body is quite finite. We can't hold it all at once. But we can learn one skill that makes everything else easier, makes our learning more smooth, and improves everything we apply it to. And that's that state of invitation I'm sharing with you. So I use this for everything personally. My writing, guitar playing, Tai Chi, healing, intuitive work, storytelling, learning, teaching, even moving my body, cooking, doing chores, everything. But it's most incredible to me when it comes to learning. Because once we attune and relax, things just link together of their own accord, and one stray thought can spark a whole new field of insight. So we can learn to enter the state of invitation and allow the information, skill, energy, and ability to simply flow through. Or to put it another way, we can learn one skill, which will help us to learn and develop and cultivate anything that we want to in our lives quickly and deeply, and at a fraction of the time and effort that we would use with other means. And once you begin working with yourself on this level, it's amazing because it starts to build up in the background. It starts to pick up momentum as it goes. And this gradually unfolds into an instant stream of information wherever you direct your focus. So this is how we can reliably make use of the superconscious abilities. We can learn to set a clear intention, enter a state of invitation, and listen inwardly. And to take it further, we can learn to move in response to this inner flow, channeling higher ability into motion, into word, writing, speaking, music, creation, performance. And once begun, the process develops in the background through our entire lives, gaining momentum and snowballing as it brings higher ability into everything that we do, right? So that's what superconscious integration is all about. That's how we can approach it. There's an art to everything. Every moment is a sacred act of creation. And when we can be present to this space of sacredness and play, we engage naturally with the superconscious. So we literally become artists of our own lives on deeper and deeper levels as we grow. So, and by the way, if you guys, as we're going along, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat or anything like that. I'll try to make some time at the end of the lecture so we can address anything that's come up. So for the moment now, the subjective science of synchronization, right? What does that look like? So I've made mention a few times of the need for this new subjective science to navigate the superconscious. And because synchronization is the practical key to the applied science of consciousness, it stands at the center of our new subjective science. So synchronization is the mechanism of miracle and magic, which are expressions of the superconscious in human life. Now, I realize that can sound really fringe, right? So let's break it down. First of all, let's get into some physics. We had some absolutely groundbreaking discoveries in physics in the early 1900s, relativity and quantum mechanics. And these insights have allowed the creation of the digital era, right? But we haven't really caught up with their implications on a human level. Our whole conception of the world, like the layman's conception of the world, is based in an idea, as I mentioned, of the objective world. And this is a space that exists independent of the observer with certain set qualities that would be the same to all observers because it is what it is. A cup is a cup. And that's just fundamental reality, right? If it's really going 50 miles an hour, but it looks to me like it's going 30 miles an hour, then my senses are biased. And 50 miles per hour is the true speed. But relativity tells us that this is not the case. There is no true speed. There is only the speed relative to this frame of reference, relative to that frame of reference. So the idea of the objective world is basically the idea that there is a center to the universe, a fixed point of reference against which the true value of everything could be determined. I mean, you could think of it like a big box of infinite extent of space with stuff in it, material objects. That's basically our naive model of the universe. Not for physicists, we just haven't caught up yet, you know, a big box with stuff in it. But relativity says there is no box, right? There is no fixed center, there's just the stuff. And from each of the stuff in it, there is a whole valid perspective of the universe. Each one is the center. So each element is the center of its own frame of reference and experiences all other elements of the universe in a unique and valid way. Space is relative to the observer. Time is relative to the observer. All that we experience as physical reality occurs in our subjective experience within frames relative to the observer. So again, this sounds abstract. And maybe the next thing that I'll share, hopefully will sound less abstract, but probably not. So what if I were to say it like this? All that we have directly to speak of our reality is a bubble of space that we move around throughout the day, a bubble of sense experience. And this is what I actually experience anyway, a bubble of sense experience and the ever-present I am receiving this experience. Now, I can't claim to know it for certain, but it seems likely to me that everybody that I see has this same core I am receiving the experience and a similar bubble of sense experience that they carry around with them. Now, in addition to this, we have what we remember, what we feel, our thoughts and stories, associated emotions, all linked into specific configurations. So we bring this to our sense experience, to the things that we see and hear and feel, and we overlay it. So we perceive and interpret everything in our frame as relative to our experience, automatically and unconsciously. We don't just see something, we see and remember and feel and stand in relation to it all at once. So this is a blending of our raw sense perception and the story and emotion we carry around in our fields. So it may sound really strange to consider, but what if what we experience, these bubbles of conscious experience, is all there is? Or rather, instead of a box that we move around in that changes over time, what if we're navigating our little bubbles of now through all of the different fluctuations of possibility, little bubbles of the actual amongst a sea of infinite probabilities, and we're condensing that reality right at the edges. So when we engage with another field of consciousness, our fields synchronize and they generate a collective field, a collaboration which unites our frequencies. So each of us humans and all other focal points of consciousness are merging to co-create this shared experience of the physical, right? So on the level of the dream, we experience this as a specific physical world, specific characteristics and conditions and qualities, specific ways that we must or must not act or must feel about it. And this is our real, right? And justifiably so. What we experience in the now, physically, is the only real we get in this space. And the physical, it's the nature of this current journey to experience the physical and to remember the spirit, to both savor the sweetness of a journey in the body. Absolutely. Yes, there is a creative act to perception. And I'll come back to that in a bit. So what we're doing here in this physical space is to savor the sweetness of a journey in the body and to learn and grow in ways that we can only hear, right? This place offers unique experience, which means it offers unique growth. So our discussion of the superconscious and working with superconscious abilities, this is not a way to escape the physical. The physical is a beautiful framework and one that we have chosen to work with for the benefits that it offers. But we can choose how this now unfolds into the next and navigate through the flow of both inner and outer experience. And that is a creative act. It's a creative act that is attuned to our attention and attuned to our interpretation, the kinds of stories and expectations that we overlay upon our experience of the world, which at first just influence our personal understanding, our personal experience of the situation. But when we act in alignment with it, it crystallizes into physical situations, into actual physical circumstances that we then share with others. So our attention, our perception, and our interpretation are creative acts at a level below the threshold of conscious awareness. So when I put all this together, what I actually see when looking out at the world is bubbles of consciousness playing out dances in relation to one another. And we're all in the background, seamlessly creating the context of the experience, dreaming it so fully that it becomes our real. And that's even while our now slides and shifts to reflect the growth and the changing conditions of our inner world. Now, what I'm doing right now for you is fleshing out the subjective frame, a different view, a different paradigm of understanding what we're actually doing in the space around us. So there's a really interesting feature of this subjective frame. Every single bit of the world that we experience is alive, right? Bubbles of consciousness, creating humans, creating animals, plants, earth, heavenly bodies, all qualities and vibrations and all that is in existence. All is birthed from consciousness, and all has an element of consciousness in its nature. Taken together, our focal points of consciousness offer solidity to one another. They become the context of one another's journey in the physical, right? And this is what the model of the experience looks like from the perspective of the subjective science, from the perspective of what we as humans actually experience. right? Now, I'll be the first to admit this is pretty far out there as a contrast to the mechanical model of the world. But when it comes to consciousness, when it comes to working with the superconscious, working with meaning or story or anything human, it works really, really well. So this bubbles of consciousness model allows for each subjective universe to be valid. It honors the subjective experience and creates a framework for freedom, while still showing the means of productively collaborating with the other beings that we encounter. So it leads us to right relation. It shows us that we can weave our dreams together, each of us playing our own unique part in the symphony. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So we weave our dreams together. We're each playing our own part, right? We don't need to be playing the same part as the other. You know, just like a symphony has many different instruments and they're all doing their thing, but they can weave together into a beautiful whole where each, in doing their own thing, contributes to a higher harmony, right? So the bubbles of consciousness bit shows both the potential for freedom for each individual to make sense of the world in their own way, and at the same time to collaborate and work together and create these higher harmony from a place of inner freedom. And this perspective, it also highlights consciousness as the key to shifting our experience of the now, right? So all of the situations that we experience are a collaborative reflection of our thoughts, feelings, stories, expectations, beliefs, and habits, and we take action informed by them. So the outer world becomes a reflection of the inner. Now, I've shared some pretty out there thoughts, so I want to just say the objective perspective of reality has been, and it continues to be, a very useful frame for working with the physical parameters of our experience. And now, as we're beginning culturally to look more deeply inward, we don't necessarily need to supplant the objective perspective of reality so much as supplement it, to add to it this subjective one, which honors the more human aspects of our experience, one which makes space for infinite valid expressions of any situation rather than just one right way of understanding it. And the beautiful thing about this is that there are many traditions which share this same subjective perspective. My favorite one, just because it is so open-ended and so human in its nature, is Toltec shamanism. So in the perspective of Toltec shamanism, the human being at foundation is described as an egg or a cocoon of light, right? So it describes that we have this egg or cocoon of light, and within this egg or cocoon, there are infinite threads which extend to all points in the cocoon. And this little bubble of energy is swimming in a sea of energy called the rays of the eagle, the emanations of the eagle. And the eagle is their word for the superconscious. And all of those different rays are different perceptions, different expressions of our potential experience. So the way that it's described in the Toltec perspective, our experience of reality comes from the threads within the cocoon meeting up with, engaging, and activating the threads from without the cocoon in a unique way. This forms the assemblage point, which is our experience of reality. And we can learn to shift the assemblage point. And when the assemblage point is shifted sufficiently far, we experience reality completely differently. We can see a whole new world, which is as equally real as the one that we were seeing before. So this is an energetic model of our foundation of experience, which makes way for infinite different expressions of each situation, right? So consciousness, or the energetic aspect of things from this perspective, is considered the foundation of reality. And the physical is that which emerges by relation. I will come back to that there at the end. And in fact, that's what I'm discussing. So the question is how do we shift? How do we shift the assemblage point, And this is a huge part of working with the superconscious, because the conscious in general is fixed. Doesn't have to be, but a lot of times when we begin engaging with this, the conscious mind is fixed into a particular way of perceiving and relating to the world. And so part of shifting the assemblage point is making these unconscious assumptions conscious. So beginning to see what stories we're holding in our field, how we're interpreting a situation, and question it. Create a little wiggle room. So in a way, what I'm doing with you right now is helping to shift the assemblage point by creating a bridge between the mechanistic frame of perception and a subjective frame of perception, right? So this explanation helps to draw in, like, what does it look like from that vantage point? And our entire experience of the world shifts when we're engaging from that vantage point. So that is one way that you could describe shifting the assemblage point. And that sounds, again, it sounds complex, it sounds intellectual, but this happens in a lot of really deeply human ways. Like, we might have the perception that life is hard, right? So if we have that perception that life is hard, that's how we're going to engage with the frame of our physical experience. And the things that we experience are going to reflect that. When we can learn to question that, maybe let go of it, maybe make space for a different way that life can show up for us, it loosens the hold of that particular assemblage point and gives us wiggle room so we can draw from and operate within a different perspective. So just to get back on track for a second. So consciousness precedes and directs the physical, and our experience of the physical is a variable function directed by the engagement of consciousness. So I mentioned too that from this perspective, all things are alive and all things partake in consciousness. So most tribal cultures have maintained a balanced relationship with the natural world by recognizing the consciousness of all living beings and by teaching their young to respect and honor that consciousness, right? This is one of the core lessons. It's one we've lost in the modern world because we are all interdependent culturally, ecologically. We share this space and we're dependent upon all parts of it. We can connect with it. Like, all bits are conscious and we can connect directly with all parts of our world in a meaningful way. So our role as humans from this perspective is to be stewards of the land, stewards of the balance of nature, honoring and supporting right relation in our interactions with one another, with the earth, and with spirit. Finding a harmonious connection with all beings within the sea of consciousness that forms the context of our experience. And when you relate consciously in a human sense with all beings you encounter, consciously as in like respectfully, not just coming from a personal, what do I want here, but actually seeing the being in front of you. When you relate consciously in that way, that relationship comes into balance. It becomes healthier. So all that we experience in the world is an expression of consciousness, and we experience this consciousness as focal points, such as living beings, right? But not only as living beings, it goes further. So we're bubbles of consciousness surrounded by and engaging with bubbles of consciousness to merge and create the entire physical experience. So this is like relativity explained in an intuitive way. Our experience of the world comes from the relation between focal points of consciousness. There's no absolute center of the world, and each being is the center of the world, experiencing a real situation relative to their frame. So relativity, again, means everything is relative, even space and time. It means that the objective view, the frame upon which science depends for its validity, while practical in a certain context, has been upended as a fundamental view of reality. So it's not really a box, it just looks like it. So now we have space for reality to be a fundamentally subjective experience. Now, again, to keep it grounded, this doesn't make what we have been experiencing any less real than it has always been to us. But it does make space for infinite expansion, infinite perspectives, infinite ways of engaging with the context of our experience. Now, in this space, one key concept is that consciousness is singular, right? So this doesn't mean that your consciousness doesn't exist. That's silly. I mean, you're sitting here, right? You're listening to this. You're conscious within your frame, within the current context of this incarnation. And this applies to everything else as well. To say that consciousness is singular means that the I am at the core of your being is the same as the I am at the core of my being and all beings. It means all is one. Everything in existence is an expression of the same I am of fundamental consciousness, and each carries the same I am of fundamental consciousness at its core. So we're all focal points and elaborations of this same fundamental consciousness which pervades the universe, which precedes the universe, and wills it into being. All is one, right? Now, this is kind of hard to swallow, right? Because I'm here and you're there, and it's pretty obvious I'm me and not you. So we have the appearance of many, right? This is how the world looks and feels to us. Again, it's our biological and conceptual bias. We experience ourselves as apart from the world, except for the fact that we don't really. Everything that we see is our sight. Everything that we hear is our sound. Everything that we experience is our experience, like all on a fundamental perceptual level. On the physical level, our bodies are composed of particles taken up from the living creatures in the world around us, and our bodies will return these particles to the earth when they're done, right? We're all part of the same earth, sharing the same spirit, one spirit focused through these eyes for this journey, right? And this same spirit shining from the eyes of anyone I encounter, from the trees and the crickets and the birds and humming softly in the wind. So we're each focal points of consciousness anchored into a specific human body, which experiences the world relative to its physical, emotional, and mental conditions. So the body and the being experiences one specific expression, one specific vibration of the infinite potential of spirit, right? So that's what makes us unique here. Each person is a specific and unique configuration or vibration on a unique journey with a perspective that they alone have. So each one of us witnesses and participates in creation from our own unique angle of being, right? Now, awesome. You are so welcome, Michelle, and I will come back to that as well. I'll try to leave some time here at the end so we can address all those little bits, but that's awesome to hear. So just to share a little story, right? A lot of times these things, they sound really complicated when you try to put them in technical terms, but some stories can offer some amazing clarity and help us to really feel it. So I remember a time, my early life on this journey was like sprinkled with these epiphanies, looking into these different perspectives and bringing them together and seeing what resulted. So I remember a time I was pondering reincarnation, right? I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember any past life or anything like that, but I'm like, okay, let's put it out as a thought experiment. Let's say that's how it works, right? Well, I don't see any reason why a soul as an expression of consciousness should be bound by form. So from that perspective, we could theoretically die and come back as anything, a tree, a blade of grass, a cell. Now, this is pretty orthodox in most discussions of reincarnation, the idea of the migration of the soul from one form to another. That's part of the base concept, right? So now I see no reason for the soul to be bound by time, right? The I am, the one, is something that is beyond change. I see it as atemporal. So from this perspective, we could conceivably come back thousands of years ago, thousands of years in the future. We might even overlap in time, meeting ourselves here and there. So if that was the case, right, how many souls would we need at minimum to create everything we experience, all of this around us? I don't know. Yes, we just need one. Just one I am. Looping back and forth in time, taking on every single form, playing every role, and meeting itself at every turn. And each focal point of consciousness offering something unique and distinct to the fundamental consciousness from which it was evoked. So each life, a precious lesson in a string of infinite experiences, each being an expression of the same consciousness that's living this life right here. And this comes up again and again. Like there's a Mayan phrase that's often used as a greeting, in la que, you are the other me. Or even the word namaste, we're more familiar with that. The way that I heard this defined is the light within me is the same as the light within you. And when we are in that light, we are one. So for me, like whether this is true in some objective sense or not, for me, the beautiful thing about it is that it changes the focus of my or our interactions with others and with ourselves to recognize that same fundamental consciousness, that same divinity in all. So viewing the world in this way inspires respect and right relation. In honoring the one within all, within ourselves, we relate with the world from a different space. So here, and we're coming up to the bit that I'm very excited to share with you now, right? So we're one, but it seems like we're many. Why is that? And how does that happen? Right? So why is a big question. And our answers to it, they're the foundation of all of our magical and spiritual and religious traditions. And so much wisdom can be found on meditating on the why in the appearance of the many and the truth of the one, the little I and the big I. But for the purposes of our discussion, the better question is how? If all is one, how does one thing seem to be separate? How does it seem to be different from all of the other stuff around it? So out of the infinite and singular sea of consciousness and energy, why is one thing separate from another? Now, you've heard the quote from Tesla, probably. If you want to know the secrets of the universe, look at energy, frequency, and vibration. Our body behaves as if it is separate from the rest of the universe because all of the bits are entrained with one another, entangled. All of the bits of our being on many levels are in resonance. So the vibration of these portions of the infinite have synchronized, and the body behaves like a one thing. So for anything, it is resonance that causes it to behave as a separate thing, and it is a distinct thing rather than a cloud of potential or a random scattering of particles. And this is a result of synchronization on many levels. So in the body, we're synchronized on physical, structural, electrical, chemical levels. We're synchronized in subtler levels of emotion, thought, and awareness. All the parts of our being, physical and subtle, come together into a harmony to form the standing wave of our separate body and separate consciousness. Now, our bodies are incredibly complex, and each of these systems has a certain degree of autonomy, right? So we have the capacity to desynchronize, like emotions going one way, body going another, thoughts going another, energy and focus scattered. But when we desynchronize, we have consequences, right? So we become at odds with ourselves. We can slow our own growth, cloud our own awareness. And if taken far enough, this impacts our physical health as well. So health is free flowing energy, which means energy that flows without restriction or impediment through the whole being. And when various parts of our being are moving in different directions, it interferes with that smooth flow. So we get blockages and imbalances. We get distortions from the healthy template. And so much of healing on an energetic level is learning how to synchronize and harmonize the various aspects of our being. So synchronizing on this level means bringing the body, heart, mind, and spirit all together to act as unison, to once again allow energy to flow freely through the body and field without tension and blockage, right? Now, this synchronization, I mentioned it before in terms of bringing the subconscious and conscious functions together. And this is huge, right? Because a lot of times our subconscious gets pretty wild and untrained, and it can work against our best interest or against our conscious desires. So when our conscious mind pushes one way and the subconscious pushes another, we have to work harder to do less. We have to work just to stand still. It's exhausting. And since we're not really taught in our culture how to navigate these spaces, this is par for the course for most human beings. Right? So when we learn to harmonize the function of the conscious and subconscious minds, we gain clarity and focus. We become healthier and more vital, as we're no longer fighting ourselves to exhaustion. We become more emotionally clear and self-aware. And in the process, something really, really amazing happens. So, instilling the inner turbulence, we connect with a space within that can resonate with other aspects of our experience. It's almost like the subconscious is an antenna, right? Uh, that's not really the best way of describing it. Actually, I like to describe it as a still pool, right? Let's say you've got a lot of ripples in the pool, a lot of motion on it. You look at it, and that's all you can see. But as soon as the pool stills, if the water's clear, you can look through and see straight to the bottom. You can see beyond the pool itself, right? So instilling the inner turbulence, we connect with a space within that can resonate with other aspects of our experience. We begin to feel and perceive everything around and everything within on a deeper level as soon as we have a quiet space from which to view it. So this brings us a new set of inner senses, all by stilling our own vibrations so we can read the subtle ones that arise within in response to anything that we tune into. This stuff is incredible, and I love to explain it on this level because if you understand why it works, you can use it in the way that works for you. That's my whole underlying focus here. So synchronization, right? In a subtle way, we synchronize with other people as well, right? And this is completely natural. We call it rapport. Humans do it all the time. So when you're flowing in conversation, the breath tends to match up, the body language tends to mirror, even the heart rate can synchronize if the connection is deep enough. So humans quite naturally synchronize and act as a one thing. And this is incredibly powerful, right? When we synchronize and share a common focus, the power builds exponentially. Our pressure upon the unfoldment of reality magnifies. Because again, we're really living in a psychological reality, and we collectively create a bubble of shared experience, all unconsciously. And when we synchronize with a shared intention, we move consciously. We collectively shift our relation to the world, and the whole physical experience moves in kind. So we can align our efforts just like the atoms in a piece of iron can be aligned to act like a magnet. And the aligned efforts of two people are many, many times stronger than the efforts of one person. So humans grow exponentially stronger as we synchronize with one another. And this is why group ritual is powerful and why we have such a strong impact on the world when we form community and tribe. So humans shift from one moment to the next. So these alignments are fluid, but you can see synchronization used in every single religious ceremony in one way or another. And you can see background synchronization reinforced with stories, cultural identity, lifestyle, and shared circumstances. So all of these things in a subtle way bring a group of individuals into sufficient resonance to form a community, a one thing with a life and a consciousness of its own. So our culture, our family, our tribe, our civilization, all of it is formed through a resonance of common language, story, lifestyle, and shared physical context. And things in resonance like this, they become one things, operating as a whole and reflecting imperfectly the consciousness of the one. So in other words, one things become alive and conscious, whether they are colonies of ants or multicellular bodies composed of trillions of tiny cells, or human culture with its complexity and individual activity. And that probably sounds a bit strange, right? I like to think about it in terms of nested consciousness. So, like a single cell from my body is a complete being, a full expression of the I am within its context. It's a me, right? And at the same time, it's just a part of the me that I know is this whole body, as Israel having this experience right now. It's both at once. It is itself and a part of a larger being. So just like ants or bees, right? They're separate organisms, but they form a superorganism that has a life and consciousness of its own. So the consciousness of the bee within the consciousness of the hive, the consciousness of the cell within the consciousness of the body. And once you see that, you can take it further. The consciousness of the body within that of the superorganism that we form with the human race, with our local environment, with the earth herself. Our body, the cell of a larger organism, which is the cell of a larger, and every single one an expression of the one within that specific context. So again, what does this mean for us? It means, for one, that our minds can access information from the shared field of fundamental consciousness, quantum consciousness, if you want to call it that, or you could call it the dreaming, or you could call it Brahma. These are all names that humans have used at some point in history to describe the same phenomena, the same fundamental field of consciousness, which is infinite, it is one, it is all power and potential, and holds all thoughts and realizations, all insights, and all potential forms. So we can access a thought if our mind is sufficiently close to the resonance of that thought. So intuitive work makes use of this. So it uses the intention to focus on a question or a person or a situation, and then we enter a state of invitation. And into this still space of invitation, energetic impressions arise, and they pull us into resonance with certain thoughts and certain feelings, right? Now, these impressions, they're initially unformed. The personal aspect of consciousness puts the unformed impressions from the dreaming into words and concepts. So on the level of the dreaming, we're working with the pure vibration of thought itself, like the shape of the thing without any of the details or the contrast or context. The dreaming contains all the potential relations, infinite, right? We can't take in all that at once. So the intention draws us to those particular relations out of the infinite sea, which are relevant to us in that one moment. We resonate with that particular bit. And again, this sounds complex, but it's just the words that make it seem so, you know? So we do this all the time, every day. It's how we think. Now, I love the example of going fishing or like Archimedes' eureka moment, right? Aha moments come when we make a little space. And we naturally make space when doing reflective activities, going fishing, taking a shower, taking a walk, sitting on the toilet. We make space and ideas pop in, right? And before this time, a lot of times without realizing it, we have primed our mind with a question, with some subtle form of intention. And the subconscious works on this in the background, and it adopts a resonance in line with these thoughts and feelings. And then as soon as we make space, realizations jump in, sometimes fully formed and more intricate than anything that we could have consciously constructed, right? So intuitive work is learning how to do this on purpose, learning how to send back a clear intention and create a space of invitation to listen for emerging impressions, easily allowing instead of forcing. Yes, I will definitely come to that very, very quickly. And Janet shared that the collective or cultural imprints are not always positive, right? In fact, within that infinite space, there are ideas that are beneficial to us and ideas that are not. And in learning to work with this, we learn a screen of discernment, you know, looking at the different ideas that come in terms of how does this serve us, rather than stories of objective truth, which can cloud the air, right? So it actually provides a lot of freedom from the established cultural or contextual imprints. Hopefully I'll get into all that, but we can touch upon that again very shortly. Okay. So as I said, intuitive work is learning how to connect with this on purpose, set a clear intention, create a space of invitation, and listen for emerging impressions, right? And then it's learning how to partner the conscious with uh, the deeper functions, right? Which takes these unformed impressions and transforms them into concepts. into perspectives, into things that we can actually work with. So this is an art that we get better at the more that we do it. And humans are incredibly sensitive, incredibly tapped in. We're always picking up something that we're often unaware of it. And in fact, this links in with what you'd mentioned, Jan, in terms of these impressions that come in. They're not always to our best interest. We're always picking them up. What we're learning to do here is become conscious in a space where we have been influenced subconsciously throughout the extent of our lives, which brings in more awareness, more freedom, more of an ability to choose whether or not we want to take on board a particular perception or relation or vibration or way of engaging, right? So that's the synchronization in the space of intuitive work, right? Now, you could describe empathy in just the same way, right? So just like the subtle pull, like we have a subtle pull in human interaction that draws us into rapport and resonance, right? Because we're always subconsciously aware of the emotional and mental currents around us. We always feel it. We always hear all the thoughts around. But we're often unconscious of these impressions. Maybe our mind is loud. Maybe we're consciously focusing elsewhere. Maybe we get something, but we second guess it. Maybe we just wonder if we were imagining it. When we bring our field into resonance with another, we enter a shared emotional and mental space where thoughts and feelings occur equally to both sides. And we notice it too when it happens. It's like we're on the same frequency. It's almost like we can finish one another's thoughts, right? And then when the resonance shifts, the experience shifts. Oh, it's not happening right now. So the word empath, it means someone who naturally tends to synchronize with the fields of those they engage with. Now, we all do this to some extent, and it's part of normal human interaction, though most of the time we're unconscious at what we're doing. And everybody holds their energy a little bit differently. So some people hold their frequency a bit more fixedly, and others tend to shift to accommodate the frequencies around them. Now, both of these approaches have value, right? It can be really, really helpful to hold a clear frequency regardless of the influences in your environment. Steadfastness, determination, it forms a nucleus around which people can orient. So holding space involves learning how to hold a clear, specific frequency and maintaining a specific focus in the space. Now, it can also be really helpful to synchronize your frequency consciously with those that you engage with. Because again, it creates a one thing, and this one thing can be moved by either party, and both will be carried along. So just think about a time when you've comforted a friend in need, right? So if you're a natural empath, you will tend to match their emotional space and then slide into a calmer space, helping them to come along with you. This is called pacing and leading. So we synchronize to create a one thing with shared emotions and mental space, and then we move our one thing consciously to shift all that's connected with it, both ourself and the friend that we're trying to help out in that moment. So like this is just part of how humans work, right? So think about this with like a storyteller or a singer or a counselor, right? Or a performer, each of them is engaging, synchronizing, and then bringing a particular quality into that space that forms a shared experience. Now, in terms of the potential for destruction as well, for this as well, like think about the behavior of a mob of people in those moments where they get lost in the action. People in that way they're synchronizing into a one thing, and it becomes a being with primal impulse, guided by the emotional resonance. And it can be conscious and beautiful and creative when we do this, or it can be unconscious, ugly, and destructive. But one way or another, it is incredibly powerful. So conscious community, a resonance formed of conscious people, it has the capacity to bring us back into balance, right? I mean, globally, as a species. But we've got lots of work to do individually and culturally to bring that in and to tip the scale. that's a little aside, back to the higher faculties, inspiration, right? Inspiration is a mystical thing, and it can leave us dumbfounded at our own creations, right? Creativity and vision, they come to us through the dreaming, through buddhi, the higher mind. It's linked with the third eye, with the sixth chakra. The impressions from the higher mind are then shaped into something comprehensible by manas, by the lower mind, connected to the throat center, right? So the lower mind is the unconscious labeling function of our personal subconscious, right? It's that part of us that names things and places them into conceptual relation with one another. So when we synchronize with a particular inspiration, allow it to flow in and then flow with it in word or song or brushstroke or moment, this is like working with the superconscious inspiration. So it brings inspiration from the superconscious through the subconscious, allowing it to then flower into activity or creative expression, right? So manifestation in terms of synchronization, right? We often describe manifestation, what we often describe as manifestation is a matter of resonance as well. So navigation to certain types of situations in the outer world, to points in outer experience which match the frequency that we hold within. So even our experience of physical reality is a matter of synchronization with a particular aspect of the range of potential experience. And this comes in on it comes in synchronizing our perception with certain kinds of focal points, certain types of interpretations, certain stories and ways that we feel about them, synchronizing our emotions and thoughts with certain types of experience. And all of this exerts a pull into the outer world, showing up in our lives as specific interactions and specific experiences that feel a certain way, observations which reflect our thoughts and expectations, right? So again, resonance, synchronization, that's the key that brings all of the higher faculties into focus. So in practical terms, this means working directly with emotion, intention, and attention. And this is a key to the subjective sciences. Emotion and intention are the mechanism. They're the mechanism of magic, the mechanism of miracles, right? There are no magical words or rituals that operate apart from their influence on our emotion and our intention. All rituals are tools of consciousness that focus emotion and intention to synchronize with a specific vibration. They tune our being to synchronize with a desired quality or effect. Once you understand that, you can use whatever outer form is appropriate for you. So this is a lot of what I want to bring to the world, right? This is the big thing, the core for me. You don't have to pray a certain way. You don't have to perform a ceremony in a specific way. You don't have to think about the world in terms of one fixed story. Once you go to the core and learn to work directly with emotion and intention, you transcend the form of all subjective arts. So when we understand the why behind the practice, we can shift from maintaining the form of the practice to honoring the essence of that practice through conscious engagement with our living moment. So again, we learn the inward arts of attention, single point focus, and the state of invitation. We learn, in other words, to align with our inner being in such a way as to allow genius and knowledge and vision and incredible ability to flow through. And the greater the space of stillness within, the more easily we can attune and allow processing and accessing information on a much higher level, learning, analyzing, moving in flow state. So this is the space that you learn in your body when you're doing Tai Chi. And learning it in the body allows you to move effortlessly and produce great force. And learning it like this is learning this space within a particular frame. So with Tai Chi, it's within the frame of motion and force and energy and breath. But we can extend the practice beyond the initial frame and into every aspect of our lives. So again, the state of invitation, intention, the state of invitation, and the art of flow can be used to learn anything and to dance with anything that you wish to do or to cultivate, getting better results with less effort. So you can literally dance with the currents of the world, right? So this takes balance, right? This is amazing, but it takes balance and clarity and awareness to engage with the moment in this way. And it takes time to train ourselves to make this our new baseline. Yes, exactly. So intention directs our mind to a particular focal point. It says, I want to synchronize with this. The state of invitation creates that receptive space within, which will naturally synchronize on its own. And then I use the word flow because if you're doing it like on a physical level, you don't try to control or figure out how it comes out. You allow yourself to move with it. And the same thing applies. I use this, I'm using it now in speaking with you and sharing. You can use it in words, you can use it in writing, you can use it in music, you can use it in movement, any art, you can use this core way of relating to it. So again, it takes balance, clarity, and awareness because you have to because it's about placing yourself in the right inner state and then aligning that with what you're doing in the outer world. And it takes time to train ourselves to make it a baseline and to make it natural. But the beautiful thing is, as we learn it incrementally, we enter a space of graceful flow instead of push. We start to glide and magnetize, and the shifts that we experience in the world are incredible, even as they take less and less effort to bring about. So humans are amazing, and we have created so many ways of connecting with and structuring our relation to the superconscious throughout the ages. The challenge is we have too many very specific arts with long traditions and heavy lineages, which access a very specific aspect of the superconscious in a specific way, right? But we're blessed in the modern era because we have the opportunity to review all of these traditions, to learn them deeply and understand both their essence and their uniqueness. So we can find in the commonalities that they all share recurring elements which reflect the fundamental human relationship with the superconscious experience. And the beautiful thing about this is that our means of connecting with the superconscious is rooted in the body. More accurately, the human experience of the superconscious comes through the harmonization of all levels of the being, which means that we have to work with the body and the emotions and the thoughts and the energy to bring everything into synchrony in order to reliably access this aspect of our ability. So we can like freely channel our inspiration, connect readily with the energy of fundamental consciousness, transform it into something sensible, and then act upon it, right? So the more that we understand about the levels of our being, the more that we can bring all of these levels on board and align with single clear intention, supported by appropriate emotion, and then channeled into inspired action. So each approach in history, each approach to the superconscious is one way of formulating emotion and intention. All energetic practices, rituals, prayers, all spiritual processes are means of focusing emotion and intention rather. And consciousness guides the unfoldment of our physical experience. So when intention and emotion are formulated clearly and directly, it's reflected in what we experience in the physical world. Now, this actually touches upon the stories and cultural imprints that you'd mentioned in one of your questions, Jan. The stories that we learn, they set emotion and intention on autopilot in the background of our experience. Now, ideally, these stories can protect and guide us and have a beneficial impact on our journey. Though, in our unconsciousness, we often use our inner stories to create challenging situations without realizing it, without meaning to, without understanding the creative power of our story and the formative influence that it has upon our experience. So stories are misused, like used in limiting or imbalanced ways, even within certain religious traditions, probably all of them actually, simply because we have forgotten the power of the word and we've forgotten the sovereign nature of our being. So on that level, understanding the nature and principle of the superconscious helps us to understand the essence behind the spiritual insights from all traditions, right? Like our current understanding of these things is easily intellectualized, you know. Once you begin working directly with the superconscious, all those spiritual books, they start making more sense on a deeper level, like on a personal level. And each tradition has certain gems, right? Certain beautiful practices, key insights, certain amazing ways of understanding or working with the world. So you and I, we are of a global heritage. We can draw from the wisdom and blessings of all the people that came before, and we can make use of all the genius of the ancient and the modern world combined. So in understanding the essence of these things, you are given space to transcend the form. When you can celebrate and cultivate consciousness in any activity, in any moment, you bring the sacred into every corner of your life and make it a living practice, right? Energetic practices, rituals, prayers, walking, washing dishes, sweeping the porch, folding the clothes. Eventually, every single thing becomes an expression of this living practice. And from this perspective, it's personal. It's attuned to our unique perspective, our unique journey, and making our own meaning in relation to the world. With a living practice every single moment, we also get sensitized to the energetic currents of life, so we can learn to flow with these currents in a way that builds and enhances our vitality, aligns with our purpose, and brings deep, centered inner freedom. Now, it does, like, it takes time. It takes years to learn one practice properly, much less 10 or 15, to such an extent that you could work through the mazes of each and integrate them productively in your life, right? And in order to do this well, you have to be able to see the core of the art very clearly and apply it creatively, exploring your personal relation to it and making it practical rather than theoretical. So this, like a proper study of it, would take a lifetime, maybe more. So that's what I've been doing. This is my like passionate monomaniacal focus ever since I was a young child, as far back as I can remember. It's what I've dedicated my life to and what I'm passionate to share with the world, right? The streamlined core of this new subjective science, which can then be built upon as humans do to bring a deeper relationship with consciousness into our collective experience. Now, I have a bit more for us, but I am also mindful. Do you feel like you could handle some more right now, or do you feel like you're ready to get to the questions and then move on? Good? Okay, awesome. Well, then we will continue. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the future of the subjective sciences, right? And again, every single subjective science works through establishing a path of conscious access of our superconscious ability, knowledge, and awareness. Now, the way I see it, all of these are different routes, you know, the Zen, like Zen practice and perspective, Toltec practice, Tantra, yoga, Tao, Qigong, Reiki, Kabbalah, energetic practices the world over, shamanism, healing modalities, intuitive practices. Each of them reflects a fragment of our ability. And each offers amazing benefits and ways of relating to the world. So all taken together, they represent a more comprehensive expression of our superconscious potential. And again, like each form of healing, manifestation, intuitive art, inspiration, creativity, all of it comes from our relationship with the superconscious. So conscious access of any of these abilities requires us to forge a clear connection, a point of access and communication between the conscious and subconscious and beyond. So all of them require, again, the state of invitation, an inner receptivity that allows the superconscious to shine through the subconscious. And the more deeply that we relate with this superconscious aspect of our being, the more directly we connect with all of these potentials as like just natural expressions of what we're doing here, right? They don't require effort after a certain point. It's just how we are. So, like loads of these different spiritual and healing practices can be demystified with an understanding of these principles. And that's awesome. Yes, yes, absolutely. Yes, all of these different perspectives are at their core and on their insight, very, very similar. They're based in the same core realizations. And at the same time, each one has unique elaborations. And within those unique elaborations are things that are of great practical value, and they're worth incorporating into into our overarching understanding of these things, right? So, all right. So understanding the principles helps us to see why these things work, helps us to understand how they were put together as they were, and how they allow us to connect with like the deeper aspects of the world, right? And this is awesome because it lets us develop our abilities without wading through loads of misunderstandings and superstitions. We can think more clearly without being bogged down by loads of things that we believe without understanding. We can use an understanding of the mechanism of superconscious experience to make anything a practice or a ceremony or a celebration of being. And when we understand the function of emotion and intention, the nature of the superconscious, we can connect with our highest ability on an even deeper level without getting lost in fixed stories that are out of context with our living experience. So while all of these things are based in the same insights, each one is elaborated in a particular language to a particular culture that's in a particular context. And it might have been completely perfect in that moment, but we no longer are speaking that language. Our culture has shifted. We're in a different context. So the stories that share these things become more and more out of sync with our personal situation. That's why this is necessary right now, So clarity, right? The future of the subjective sciences must be based on that which we can understand personally and experience, and not loaded down with a conceptual maze of story that locks us in the abstract, that keeps us out of our body and our personal understanding. Now, at the same time, I'm all about understanding mechanisms so we can have clarity in here, but the subjective science needs a mythopoetic view to entrain emotion, to make the situation meaningful and give us access to specific emotional charge, right? We can't make it all technical and clinical. Look what happens when you get an individual who is an expert in a scientific field speaking in the terms that they speak. If there are other people who are expert in that field, they might understand, but for everybody else, it loses all meaning. So making it technical sometimes doesn't make it mean anything more on the human level. Everything that we're experiencing is alive. Everything that we engage with is conscious. So we must use stories that engage our sense of meaning and that support our right relation with this consciousness. Our stories, they personalize and contextualize. They show us how we can engage with the world. They connect us with powerful meaning and emotion, and we can use the mythic story to contextualize the hero's journey of our lives, placing ourselves at the center of power and transformation in our own journey. So we've got a couple of elements that we need for the subjective sciences moving forward. Clear principles for the mechanism, like our emotion, intention, synchronization. We need a strong mythopoetic view that helps it to actually mean something to us on a human level, right? We also need, in the subjective sciences, we need to honor the incredible wisdom and embodied genius of our traditions, which I'm so pleased to see that we're coming to that. When I was young, all the old tribal philosophies, that was just when people were ignorant and they didn't have the blessing of our science. It's not true. There's wisdom in every one of those traditions. And it's not the same things that we've discovered in our scientific investigations, but it's incredibly valuable. So we need the subjective sciences to honor that wisdom and the embodied genius of our traditions and help us to make use of this wisdom in our daily lives. So it's not just some story that we talk about every Sunday. It's something that we're living, right? We need it to be personal and applicable rather than parroted and conceptual. So we're talking about ways that we directly engage with the frame of our experience, not just ways that we put in a box to understand it. And connected to this, we need the subjective sciences to encourage personal elaboration of spiritual practices with a clear understanding of mechanism. So this is the creation of new living ritual, not stuck to superstition, not frozen into old forms. And finally, this probably should have been first, honestly, we need our subjective sciences to promote right relation, to emphasize our power and the need to use this power with respect for the living beings that we impact, for all the earth. And probably one of my own particular things that I love to harp on, we need in the modern era an approach that is open-ended, allowing room for each person to make sense of the world in their own way with their own stories. So, for example, you don't need to share my religion in order to work with me on the level of emotion and intention. We don't need to use the same stories to make sense of the world in order to get along and work together productively. We also need this to be open-ended in practice and approach because there's no one size fits all in the subjective sciences. Like we're all wired a bit differently. So different things will work differently for us. Different practices, different perspectives, different paths of development. Now, I love to use the human body because this is a frame that everybody that I'm working with, I'm usually working with other humans, it's a frame we all share, and it can offer clear guidance to all those who share it. And this is about as close as we can get to a universal approach in the subjective realms, right? Each person develops their own relationship with the inner world, with consciousness and feeling and story, but we all use the same principles to get there. And when we understand the principles, the mechanism behind the magic, we can take it even further. We can draw from the strongest elements and sidestep the mazes present in each tradition. So the subjective science must be based in the essence of these arts rather than the form, and able to be personalized by each individual to create a personal living practice. So again, like it's got to be open-ended because every one of us has a universe inside. No one answer is going to be right for everyone. No one path. And this is what has caused us confusion for so long, right? And this is what we can really bring to the table with our Western focus on mechanism and concrete causation. We can look at the plethora of subjective arts and find the core principles utilized by them all. We can overlay these different arts to create new, aligned, powerful living ritual, deeply magical, fresh, and in tune with our current context and perspective, right? Now, what I'm sharing with you here, this is the keys to the kingdom, but there's a catch. So in order to really make use of this, not just to know it's possible, we have to engage upon a path of inner mastery. So to reach the superconscious reliably, I mentioned we got to harmonize all parts of the being. And it's a maze. So it's incredibly helpful to have a map, which will allow steady, clear progress, bit by bit expanding consciousness and intention through the various scopes of our being. So that's why I mentioned that the practice is rooted in the body. To build our inner art from the ground up, to realign every aspect of our being into harmony so that it can reflect the superconscious potential, we have to begin with the body and the breath. And then move from the body on the breath to our emotions, learning how to handle them, learning how to not suppress them, learning how to be strengthened by them and listen to the wisdom present in them. And we have to bring it up to the attention and start to fine tune our focus, start to fine tune how we engage through this energetic antenna with the moment of our experience. And then it moves up our relation to ourselves and others, our word and story, personal power, our vision. Each of these things is an art in itself, and each can be aligned with the superconscious to allow our true ability to flow through. So there are steps to our development, right? And with each step comes a superpower or several, right? The body offers subtle wisdom in response to the world. The breath can be used as a vehicle to change our mode of consciousness. The sacral, it's the center of physical energy, and it can be used to vitalize the body, to experience robust health and physical power. And this same center, the sacral center, governs lower emotion, and it's the key to empathy and clairsentience, as well as to the sensitivity to healing type energies, right? Our attention, linked up here in the solar plexus, that's connected to our conscious focus of energy. And it's moderated by our stories, which crystallize into a structure that we sometimes call the ego. When we can focus the attention, we can guide the entire experience. Energy flows where attention goes, right? And it goes on, right? As we expand from solar plexus into the heart, we come to a point of connection with all beings in creation. The heart is the nexus point, right? It's the center of the embodied self, and it's the gateway for energies to enter our space, to transform from subtle to dense, and vice versa. Our heart is our resonance point, which aligns us with certain types of experiences. So our relationship with ourselves, which lives right in here, this is the template for our relationship with the world. And when you can tune that, your experience of the world shifts in incredible ways. But it goes further, because from the heart center, we create a nucleus of community, which, if it can be done consciously, that will be the one thing that can take us where we really need to go. Links of light between beings forming an energetic matrix of love and mutual support, growth and authentic connection. And still it goes on, right? We have the power of the word. And I've been showing that with this particular lecture right here. Our words they crystallize concepts into specific perspectives. The word forms a story, and the template of the story underlies our physical experience of reality. So working on the level of sound and story is incredibly powerful. It vibrates standing waves into being. So it shapes the infinite potential of the dreaming into a specific expression. And then there's the dreaming itself, which contains all thought, all emotion, all relation, all vibration, absolutely everything. And human beings are so incredible that they swim in the dreaming unconsciously all the time. And we can learn to connect with the dreaming more directly as well in so many ways. And that's a lot of what I've been sharing about with you today. But still, there's more, right? So there's a point of stillness beyond the dreaming, which most perfectly reflects the I am, the single point of being. And from this space, we can reach out and touch every bit of time and space. From this space, we can link to absolute peace, complete inner freedom, and it's really impossible to describe. You can point to it. So it's taken me years of single-minded and incredibly intense study, application, practice, and refinement to produce what I'm offering the world now. And even so, this is an art that will continue to develop and refine in our relation to it. Consciousness is the new frontier, and we're so ready, right? So just to cap it off with my own little stuff, I'll share briefly what I've been putting together and what I've been sharing with the world in my courses, and in my personal sessions and things like that, is a streamlined, actionable, and open-ended foundation for personal magic. So it's amazing to know that we have all of this potential. And it's amazing to me that our ability to connect with the world in this way points to the nature of our experience. It gives us a personal experiential connection to truth. And all that's awesome in principle. What comes next is putting this together into a structure that can be learned quickly and deeply, which builds up from the foundation, just like a yoga pose. So a practice that will allow us to steadily refine and deepen into our ability to cultivate consciousness throughout every nuance of our being, and to integrate our superconscious ability with how we show up in daily life. And again, it all starts with the breath and the body. Learning how we can shift gears, switch into different modes with our breath and attention, learning how to meet our emotions and process them in the moment, how to clear old stuff and reclaim the inner power and clarity locked away within it, developing presence and mindfulness, and developing a practice of single point focus. and on, it's truly meeting ourselves and making peace with every aspect of our world brings radical acceptance. This brings a state of grace, right? And it steps us into a new level of the game, completely changes the nature of our experience. And we can go on from there, learning the art of story, the power of the word, and the unfoldment of these things through time, because time and mind are two expressions of the same thing. And when we learn the art of the word and the art of story, we learn to swim through time in a different way. And this brings us to the sea of vision and inspiration and learning how to uh, create a hermetic bridge that allows us to draw insight and genius through and allow it to inform our creation, right? So, and then beyond that, to connect with the still point of fundamental consciousness within. This is one way to structure the journey so that it touches all parts of the human experience and refines each. And when you break it down into steps like this, aligned with the template of natural human development, we can cultivate one thing at a time, each leading to an awakening of the next. Each practice, the seed of a lifelong unfoldment in this space, where we encounter more and more profound abilities and deeper awareness as we go along. So I share this now because that's what I've been putting together over the last decades, what I'm opening to share with the world now. I've been cultivating a personal practice based on the fusion of all of these beautiful perspectives, gathering the core bits together, refining it with application along the journey, from breath to meditation, emotional processing, conscious relating, intuitive work, and the art of discernment, working with energy and understanding the subtle language of the body, understanding our natural empathy, and I love this one, so deeply that instead of just picking up ambient currents, we can use this as a main line to the energy of source and creation. And all of this is just scratching the surface. So working with oneself in this way offers vitality, robust health, emotional resilience, self-awareness, mental clarity, improved memory and concentration, better analysis and creative synthesis. It transforms our inner trickster and saboteur into a powerful ally, working with uncanny genius to support our aligned efforts in life. Working with ourselves in this way is learning how to dance with the currents of life, inviting and allowing blessing, inviting beautiful relationships and grace and comfort and ease and growth and intensity and more. It's all the best bits of a fully human life, fully lived. So I've put this together into a structured curriculum, building up from the foundation, and it's basically adept training for humans that know they're magical and want to take it as far as it goes. Because this goes deeper than any single tradition. All traditions are beautiful. This is a practice and form of inner training that is based in an understanding of how and why all of these practices work across the board, which creates an open playing field for you to develop your living practice in tune with your life and your unique journey. And the beautiful thing about this is that it's fresh out of the silo, right? So I've read so many books that say the same thing, basically, people repeating one another. And it's amazing stuff. Like we brought up, there's really just the one core insight that all traditions are based on. But what I'm offering you, as you heard today, this is a fresh and experiential way of working with our journey. And it opens doors to new worlds. So if this has left you with some curiosity, if it's fired you up to deepen your journey and realize more of your awesome potential, let's talk. Let's have a conversation. I'm honored to serve, and it is a blessing to me to be able to share the fruits of these explorations with those who may benefit from them. All right, so that wraps up what I've got to share with you today. I want to thank you so much for your patience and thanks for sticking in there. And if you got any questions at the moment, is that a raised hand, Paula? Would you like to? Nope. Okay, cool. So yeah, if there's any questions that we got coming up, I'll try to look at the chat and see if there's questions I haven't addressed yet. But yeah, speak up, guys. I think you're on mute right now, so you'll have to take that off for me to hear you.
Thank you, Israel, a lot for sharing. That was very nice. Like a lot of things coming together indeed.
Amazing. You're so welcome, man. And thank you for the beautiful questions and comments that you provided along the way. All is really beautiful stuff. And I love, by the way, you'd mentioned earlier, all is birthed from consciousness and all has an element of consciousness in its nature. I really
I
love.
was I was just quoting you. I was because it stuck to is what you said. So I was basically rephrasing exactly what you said.
Mhm.
This when I do my writing, I do exactly what I was describing with you today, you know. So I'll go ahead and go in that space and allow it to come through. And a lot of times I'll look back and be like, wow, that's super cool. You know, I probably couldn't have put that together if I tried. Although over time it starts to get more integrated. So this is like it becomes natural thought. But that part did impress me. That part was just a little gem that dropped through for sure.
I could tell that that's true for you, even the way that you speak too, that you have like the super conscious integration because it flows in a very unique way that's probably not natural to a lot of people. So it's noticeable, definitely. And I would just want to say thank you because this is incredible. And a lot of this information is intuitive too. Like it's things that I may be practicing to an extent just because it feels right. So when you describe it in this way, it like so many things just make sense because of it. So this was fantastic. Thank you.
That's awesome. You are so welcome. And that was one of the big hopes that I had with it because, you know, again, a lot of what I'm saying here, it's not the first time that you or anybody else has heard it, you know. But
Mhm.
if you put it together the right way, then it can provide a bunch of clarity. It can help to link the pieces together so it's not these isolated bits of understanding, you know.
Already, like I'm so excited to take this information and like and do more with it. And now I'm seeing myself like in my bubble. Okay, what do I like consciously want to invite into my bubble and like what yeah what are the interactions that I want to consciously invite. It's yeah, it's an interesting perspective that I really resonate with.
That's amazing. That's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And one of the things that I hope for, I've mentioned a couple of times, what came through was a focus on community because
Mhm.
we are so much stronger together. And
Yeah.
because not maybe through any intention or anything like that, but we've been conditioned. If we're a little bit different, if we're working on different stuff than what culture is, what is prevalent in our culture, we'll tend to go off and do it on our own.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, great. We need to do that to get to the point where we can come together and weave our magic, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're ready for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
I also liked when you mentioned because it's corroborates with what I heard before, but you said it in a good way. Like all rituals are actually, you know, ourselves working with ourselves. So, you know, any prayer, any, you know, magic that we're going to do is actually just us with us. And therefore, I'm wondering, you know, what is the place within us that is giving quote unquote permission, or is it priming that we give ourselves like a new line of code in our software, and then the subconsciousness is like, okay, so we're gonna do that now. You know, I'm wondering um how does it like work together within us, or is it that okay, I'm creating this ritual for myself that, you know, I want to lucid dream or remember my dreams, and then I just I just created it in my realism, in my reality, and then I go on from there, you know, like it's a little bit confusing, like uh but I think intuitively I get it. It's just like speaking it out and putting everything together is difficult.
I hear you. It's agreements. It's
Mhm.
agreements that we make with ourselves, you know? So, um, how can I put it right? there's so many ways that it could be described that I almost get lost in the possibility of like this way or that way of explaining it. Um, Basically, anytime that we take an action with intention, we're making an agreement with ourselves that this symbol of the action is going to move in a particular direction, or it's going to link in with a particular type of energy or experience. Now, the challenge in this is that it is much more powerful if we do so from the right state. Because in our normal waking consciousness, we got things kind of set on automatic. You know what I mean? We know that it works like that over there, right? So we're actually establishing a constant unconscious pressure to keep it fixed in that way of relating to us. So in order to make a ritual, what we have to do is step aside. We got to make a little break in our expectations, make a little break in our action, and dedicate this new thing to that particular thing. Now it's all agreement because honestly, the power is within us, right? We're not connecting with something outside. And every bit that we experience in our lives, we experience it because we are participating in this experience. We are, you could call it manifesting. I don't like the term because it tends to be one-sided, but we have participated unconsciously in this creation. So to do a ritual is actually to make a new conscious agreement and then slow down so the conscious and subconscious are working together. And then the action is putting energy in. Like when we make a physical ritual, we're putting our intention and emotion and attention into doing this particular thing. And the more elaborate that we make it, the more energy that we're putting in it, the more of our own consciousness we are ingraining into the situation, right? So this is actually how an understanding of the principle can make these things work much better for us. Because you could do the outer action while your mind's somewhere else and you're not really there, but your body's doing all this stuff. That's not a ritual. I mean, it is, but it's just the outer trappings and it lacks the essence, you know? Or if you get to that point of single point focus with complete clear intention, then what we're doing is devoting all that energy to send a message back to our relation with the superconscious so that it can invite that new way of coming forth. So I'm hoping that I explained that well. I don't know if I really addressed everything that you're bringing up there.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. I get it. Thank you.
Well, you're
Yeah.
quite welcome. You are quite welcome. And I
Yeah.
notice, let's see, I don't know if Michaud's still on, but I want to, Michaud, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be able to share with you. And yeah, if I love working with the art of words. They are limiting because, words are just concepts and they don't take us all the way to the core of the experience. But they're so powerful too, because they can point us to ways of working with our experience that work for us and that help us to sidestep the limitations that we've unintentionally been conditioned with. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
all right. You guys have anything else for the moment?
I just want to thank you. You're so gifted with this, so it's a real treat to be present with you today. But I do have to get going, but this was fantastic and we'll definitely keep in touch. Thank you.
I look
Yeah,
forward to our
absolutely.
next chat. Absolutely. I want to thank you so much for taking the time and joining me today. It means the world to me. So I hope you have an amazing rest of your day or night or whatever you end up getting to. And yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. I'm here.
Okay. Take
Thank
care.
you,
Bye.
Lisa.
You're welcome.